After 22 years in the Army, I watched my daughter-in-law dump my medals into the trash on Thanksgiving morning. "Nobody wants this old junk at the table," she said. My son said nothing. I smiled, picked up my phone, and took one photo of the trash can. By morning, she was packing her boxes. "My name is Gary Holt. I'm 62, and I've lived at 914 Birchwood Drive in Cincinnati, Ohio for 23 years. Before I retired 14 months ago, I spent 2 decades as a senior freight logistics inspector for a federal agency. My job was reading cargo manifests, cross-referencing weight logs, and watching people's faces when the numbers didn't add up. Before that, 22 years in the Army. Both careers gave me the same habit. I noticed things other people walk right past. My neighbors would call me quiet. My old colleagues would say something else. Patient, maybe, the kind of patient that makes people nervous once they realize what you've been watching. The house on Birchwood is paid off, has been for 11 years. 3 bedrooms, a finished basement where I do woodworking on Tuesday evenings, and a front porch with a view of the street I never get tired of. The county appraised it at $382,000 last spring. I know this because I checked after I got a letter I was never supposed to receive. I'll get to the letter. My son Scott is 36. He has his mother's patience and my habit of trusting people longer than he should. He works IT for a logistics company downtown. Good job, steady paycheck, decent man, until about 2 years ago he called every Sunday and stopped by most weekends. Then he married Amber. Amber Holt, born Amber Reeves, is 31. She has the kind of warmth that comes with a calculator running quietly behind it. First time we met, she called me Gary right away. Not Mr. Holt, not sir, like familiarity was something she was owed. Shook my hand with both of hers. Told me the house had so much potential. I passed her the bread and filed that comment away. The changes in Scott came gradually enough that you could almost convince yourself nothing was changing. He called less, then less again. When I reached out, he'd answer, but something in his voice was off. Careful, like someone reading from a script he didn't write himself. Once I called on a Wednesday and Amber picked up his phone, said he was in the shower. He didn't call that night, he called the next morning while she was out. My birthday came in October. I made a pot roast out of habit and set an extra plate at the table just in case. He texted at 8:47 p.m. "Sorry, Dad, crazy week." First time in 36 years he hadn't called on my birthday. Not a call, not even a voicemail, just a text. I sat at that table for a while after I read it. Then I put the plate away, went downstairs to the workshop, and ran the sander for about an hour. Didn't build anything in particular, just needed something to do with my hands. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, a letter arrived addressed to me from a notary office on Kenwood Road. It looked like routine property mail, so I almost set it aside with the rest of the stack. I opened it. Inside was a draft durable power of attorney. My name was pre-filled as the grantor. The designated agent was listed as Nolan Reeves, Amber's brother. I set the paper flat on the kitchen table and read it twice. Then I called the notary office. The woman who answered was pleasant and professional. She thought I was calling to confirm my appointment. "We have you down for Thanksgiving Day, Mr. Holt, 2 p.m. at your residence. Your daughter-in-law arranged everything. Will Mr. Reeves be bringing the full property documentation?" I told her there might be a scheduling conflict and I'd be in touch. Hung up, didn't call back. I opened my notebook, small blue cover, same format I've used since 1991, and wrote one line at the top of a fresh page. Nolan Reeves, POA, Thanksgiving. What does he want with the house? Then I made coffee and got to work. I've spent a lot of years doing work that requires sitting with a problem until it opens up. You don't rush it, you don't react, you start pulling threads and you follow each one wherever it goes. That first evening, I pulled up the Ohio Secretary of State's Public Registry and typed in Nolan Reeves. Reeves Property Group LLC came up immediately, registered 8 months ago, Nolan Reeves listed as sole member. I cross-referenced with the Ohio Division of Real Estate Licensing database. His broker license was active, no disciplinary history on file. Then I ran a search across 3 real estate listing aggregators. Found what I was looking for on the third one. A listing for 914 Birchwood Drive, marked off-market, seller-motivated, closing target Q1. The asking price was $365,000. I did the math on a standard 6% commission that came out to $21,900. I sat back from the screen for a minute. A man who lists someone else's house before he has legal authority to sell it is not making a clerical error. He has made a decision, and decisions like that always leave a trail. I spent the next 3 weeks at my desk the same way I used to spend long shifts at the inspection dock, focused. Everything else stops registering when I'm in that mode. My old supervisor used to say I looked more locked in at hour 8 than hour 1. It was never discipline exactly. It was closer to what happens when you've been doing something long enough that the work just takes over. The Ohio Secretary of State database is public record. Anyone with a laptop and an internet connection can pull it. What most people don't know is how to read what they're looking at. Reeves Property Group LLC looked clean on the surface. Filed correctly, registered agent listed, address on record. But the address was a UPS store on Montgomery Road. Not an office, not a storefront, a mailbox. I cross-referenced Nolan's broker license number against the Ohio Division of Real Estate Transaction Records for the past 3 years. He had closed 4 deals total. 2 of them were in the same subdivision in Norwood. The commissions combined added up to about $31,000. That's not a career, that's a hobby with paperwork. Then I went back to the MLS listing for my address. I took a screenshot with the timestamp visible. The listing had been posted 6 weeks before Thanksgiving. 6 weeks before Thanksgiving, I had no idea any of this was happening. I printed the screenshot and added it to the folder. I pulled the Ohio Revised Code on unauthorized real estate transactions and on elder financial abuse, printed the relevant sections and highlighted the parts that applied. Ohio takes elder financial exploitation seriously. The statute covers situations where someone obtains or attempts to obtain control over another person's property through deception. The penalty range goes up to a felony of the first degree depending on the value of the assets involved. My house at $382,000 put it well inside that range. I called Diane Walsh on a Tuesday morning. Her office is on Commerce Street downtown. 18 years in family and property law, recommended by a former colleague who went through a messy estate dispute a few years back. I paid $1,200 for the initial consultation. She was direct, which I appreciated more than she probably knew. She explained that a durable power of attorney obtained through misrepresentation is fraudulent procurement under Ohio law. She also explained something I hadn't fully considered yet. Even a legitimately signed POA has limits. It cannot authorize the sale of property that has been placed into a revocable living trust. Inside a trust, the grantor remains the trustee. A POA agent has no authority over trust assets. I asked her to prepare the trust paperwork. She filed it 6 days before Thanksgiving. The house at 914 Birchwood Drive was no longer just my home. It was now a legal entity I controlled as trustee, and no signature on any power of attorney form was going to change that. But I still needed to know how far this had already gone. I needed to see the full picture, and I needed the people behind this plan to show me that picture themselves. That's where my neighbor Neil Porter came in. Neil and I had lived 4 houses apart for 9 years. We'd shared tools, watched each other's places when one of us traveled, talked about the Bengals more than either of us probably should. He was always private about his work. Federal government, he'd said once, left it there. I respected that because I understood it. You don't talk about what you do. You just do it? The evening before Thanksgiving, I timed my walk to the mailbox for when I knew Neil usually checked his. He was coming down his front steps when I reached the end of his driveway. We exchanged the usual few words about the weather. Then I held out the blue folder. I told him it might interest him professionally, not as a neighbor, as a professional. He looked at the folder for a moment, took it, said he'd take a look. I walked home and made dinner. 2 days later, he knocked on my front door in the morning. He stepped inside just far enough that we weren't visible from the street. He had the folder under his arm. His expression was the one I recognized from my own career. The look of someone who has confirmed what they already suspected and now has to figure out what to do about it. He told me he was going to need to open a formal inquiry. He told me it would take time before anything moved officially. And he told me I could not say anything to Nolan or Amber that would signal there was any kind of review underway. I told him I'd kept quieter than this for 31 years. Something shifted in his expression at that, not quite a smile. He tucked the folder under his arm and said he'd be in touch. I want to be clear about something. I'm not a vengeful person by nature. I don't enjoy watching people get into trouble. What I do care about is accuracy. I spent my career making sure that what was on paper matched what was actually in the container. When it didn't match, you dealt with it. Not emotionally, not dramatically. You just dealt with it. Amber and Nolan had built a plan on one assumption, that a retired man living alone in a paid-off house was exactly what he appeared to be. Quiet, maybe a little lonely. Someone who would sign a form if his daughter-in-law put it in front of him and his son stood there without saying anything. They were wrong about the house. They were wrong about me. I went back to the kitchen, poured another cup of coffee, and started thinking about the Thanksgiving menu. The turkey wasn't going to brain itself. Thanksgiving morning, I was up at 6, turkey in the oven by 7, green bean casserole prepped and sitting on the counter. I'd set the table the night before, good plates, the silverware set my wife and I picked out 34 years ago, still without a scratch on it. And on the buffet table against the wall, where I always put it when family comes to the house, I set out the display case. Dark wood frame, glass lid, velvet lining. My service medals inside, the ones that meant the most to me from 22 years. I'm not someone who puts those out to impress anyone. I put them out because this is my home and those medals are part of what this home is. Simple as that. Scott and Amber arrived just before noon. Scott looked tired in the way that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got. He hugged me at the door and asked if I needed help with anything in the kitchen. I said I had it covered. Amber came in behind him, looked around the living room the way she always does, taking stock of things, and then her eyes landed on the buffet table. She walked over and picked up the display case, turned it once in her hands. "Gary, why do you have this out? Nobody wants to look at old military stuff at dinner." She didn't wait for a response. She carried it to the kitchen, lifted the lid of the trash can next to the counter, and dropped it in. The lid snapped shut. Scott was standing in the doorway between the living room and the kitchen. He looked at the trash can. He looked at me. He didn't say anything. I looked at him for a second. Then I walked to the kitchen, reached into the trash can, and lifted the display case out. I set it on the counter next to the stove. Then I picked up my phone, pointed the camera at the open trash can with the lid still up, and took one photo. Amber was watching me the whole time. "Just keeping a record," I said. I put the phone in my shirt pocket, checked the turkey, and went back to the living room. She didn't know what to make of that. That was fine. Neil arrived at 5:30, right when I'd asked him to. Dark jacket, relaxed expression, just a neighbor stopping by for the holiday. I introduced him to Scott and Amber as the man who lives 4 houses down, which is true. Scott shook his hand. Amber gave him a polite smile and went back to arranging things on the table. We sat down around 6. The food was good. The turkey came out right. Amber spent a good portion of the meal talking about the Cincinnati real estate market, equity locked up in older homes, how the smart move at a certain age was to simplify, free up capital, reduce maintenance. She framed all of it as general conversation. She was watching me the whole time to see how I was taking it. I gave her the same polite nods I used to give cargo agents when I already knew what was in the container. No reaction worth reading. Scott was quiet through most of dinner. He asked Neil a few questions about the neighborhood, how long he'd been on the street, whether he'd seen much turnover. Normal conversation. Neil answered easily and said very little about himself, which is a skill I recognized and respected. At 6:45, Amber glanced at her phone under the table and then looked up with a small smile. My brother Nolan was running errands nearby. "I hope it's okay if he stops in for dessert, Gary." "Of course," I said. "More the merrier." Nolan Reeves pulled into the driveway 8 minutes later. He's 34, dressed like someone who wants you to know he takes himself seriously. The kind of man who treats every room like a pitch meeting, he called. He shook my hand and told me what a great house this was. "Solid bones," he said. "Great street." I thanked him and offered him a seat. We moved to the living room for pie. Nolan set his bag down by his chair in the casual way of someone who had always planned to open it. He took a few bites of pie. Made some small talk about a development project near Hyde Park. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a tablet. "Gary, I just wanted to share something family to family. I pulled some comps for this area over the past 90 days. A house like this, your square footage, your lot size, you're sitting on somewhere between $360,000 and $375,000 easy, probably more if you did a few updates." He turned the tablet toward me. There was a slide on the screen. My address was on it. Amber leaned forward and placed a folded document on the coffee table in front of me. "It's just a simple form, Gary, nothing complicated. It just means that if you ever need help managing things down the road, someone you trust can step in and take care of it for you. It's very common. A lot of people your age have one." Scott looked at the document on the table. Something changed in his face. He opened his mouth and then stopped. I let the room sit quiet for a moment. Then I reached under the side table, picked up the blue folder, and set it on the coffee table next to the POA form. I looked at Nolan. "I found your listing," I said. 914 Birchwood Drive. Off-market, MLS internal database, closing target Q1 asking $365,000. I opened the folder to the first page and turned it toward him. "You posted it 6 weeks ago. I never authorized that listing. I never spoke to you about selling this house." Nolan's hand stopped moving on the tablet. I turned to the next page in the folder. "This is the notary letter, the one your office sent to my address by mistake. It has your name on it, Nolan, as the designated agent and a scheduled appointment for Thanksgiving Day at 2 p.m. to have me sign over control of this property." I set it face up on the table. That appointment was arranged without my knowledge. Amber had gone still. She was looking at the folder, then at the POA form still sitting on the coffee table, then at me. I turned to the last section. 6 days ago, I transferred this property into a revocable living trust. I am the trustee. A power of attorney cannot authorize the sale of assets held inside a living trust. That form Amber placed on the table has no legal effect on this house. It never did. I closed the folder and set it down. Neil Porter set his fork on his plate, reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, and placed a credential wallet open on the coffee table. The seal caught the light from the lamp across the room. His voice shifted, not louder, just different. The tone of someone who does this for a living and finds no drama in it whatsoever. Mr. Reeves, I'm Special Agent Neil Porter with IRS Criminal Investigation. I have questions regarding Reeves Property Group LLC, specifically the sourcing of your operating capital and the financial structure of the transactions associated with this address. You have the right to have an attorney present before answering any questions. The room went quiet in a way that is hard to describe, not tense exactly. More like everything that had been moving suddenly stopped. Nolan's tablet was still in his hands. He set it down on the cushion next to him slowly, like he wasn't sure his hands were working right. His face had changed completely. The pitch meeting energy was gone. He looked younger without it, and not in a good way. Amber stood up, sat back down, looked at Scott. Scott was not looking at her, he was looking at me. His expression was the specific kind of still that you see when someone is processing something they should have seen coming a long time ago and are only now understanding why they didn't. Neil asked Nolan to come with him to the study. It was phrased as a request. It was not one. Nolan stood up, straightened his jacket out of reflex, and followed Neil down the hall. The study door did not close all the way, and I could hear Neil's voice in there, steady and unhurried, the tone of a man who has conducted several hundred of these conversations and treats each one the same way. Amber sat on the couch with her hands in her lap. She looked at the folder on the coffee table. She looked at the POA form. She did not look at Scott. After a few minutes, Scott got up and came to the kitchen doorway where I was standing. He spoke quietly. "How long have you known?" 3 weeks, I said. "Give or take a day." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was doing this. I swear I didn't know." "I believe you," I said. And I did. Neil was in the study with Nolan for just over 30 minutes. I washed the dishes while I waited. I've washed dishes slowly before when I needed somewhere to be without looking like I was waiting for something. Scott dried. We didn't talk much. The sound of Neil's voice came down the hall at intervals, low and even. When they came out, Neil's expression told me what I needed to know. He said a formal summons would be issued to Nolan within 10 business days. He also said that Diane Walsh should expect contact from his office regarding the unauthorized listing and the POA procurement. He shook my hand, thanked me for dinner, and left. Nolan walked out to his car without looking at anyone. Amber stood at the bottom of the stairs for a moment after the front door closed. Then she looked at me. "You set all of this up," she said. "You set it up," I said. "I just made sure I was ready when you did." She went upstairs. I heard her moving around up there for a while. Scott sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and didn't say much. Around 10, he went upstairs too. I finished cleaning up and went to the workshop for about half an hour. Not to build anything, just to be somewhere quiet with my hands busy. By 8 the next morning, Amber was in the driveway with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. Scott held the door for her. He didn't try to stop her, and he didn't help her load the car either. He just stood there. When she pulled out of the driveway and turned off Birchwood, he came back inside and sat down at the kitchen table. I poured him a cup of coffee and sat across from him. He looked at the display case sitting on the counter where I'd left it the day before. "Can I see those?" he asked. I brought it over and set it between us. He opened the lid and looked at each one. He asked me what they were, so I told him. Each medal, what it was for, where I was stationed, what was happening that year. We sat there for almost 2 hours, and I told him things I'd never gotten around to saying out loud before. That was the best part of Thanksgiving. Probably the best conversation we'd had in years. If this story meant something to you, hit like and leave a comment telling me what time it is where you are right now. I read every one. And if you know someone who is dealing with something like this, a parent being pressured, a family member being pushed out of their own home, share this with them. Sometimes people just need to know it can be handled. Subscribe and click the box on the left for the next story.